louder. Right? And then off my left. Weakness. Okay, what else? Arrhythmias. What? Good. Weakness. Metabolic acidosis. Ano yun yung fast relatives? Right? Hypoglycemia. Siyempre, weakness din yan. Or seizures. Okay, and then yun nga, the patient is likely to die, no? If losses to are not rapidly corrected. Okay, so typically, we should think about the possibility of cholera if they happen to be residing or they there was a recent travel in the area, and as compared to other diarrheal diseases, ang cholera daw occurs in large outbreaks affecting both adults and children. Maybe different to diagnosis with other causes of diarrhea. Severe water diarrhea would include detect or younger patients with respiratory rotavirus. Yeah, so that's a very important cause of viral naman viral cause of severe water diarrhea. And school exam, maybe normal would show you very few leukocytes and lymphocytes. I think I give one slide because it's toxin mediated, diba, ang cholera. Maybe as compared to Shigella and something. And the gold standard based on the stool culture. Serology, I don't think that's really available. And if there's a active microscopy, wet mouse of the rice water stools will show you the darting motility of the videos. Okay? But, yeah, most of the time, it is difficult to recognize, but of course in outbreaks, they will have to find out what's causing the outbreak. So, the mainstays in all the areas actually will be dehydration, okay, for mild to moderate, dehydration, of course, ORS, this will be taught again in gastro, but should the patient be in shock, siyempre, you need to counter the shock immediately by giving IV fluids and plain. Usually you give crystalloids, like lactate will be used to establish immediately. Okay, there supposedly also is a role for zinc. Itong diarrhea siya. Why? What does zinc do? It has been found out to shorten during diarrhea and reduces subsequent diarrheal episodes. So there's the dose, less than 6 months, 10 milligrams, 60 grams per day, given for 4 minutes. So, what about other, so I showed you this, so be familiar to this local data on resistance. I introduced this last time. So this is cholera, cholera is one of the susceptibility or resistance or susceptibility being monitored. So, hindi na pwede na. So, yeah. Again, what I tell you is significant resistance, 15 to 20%. So, there, what is it na below 1%. So, the ampicillin hindi pwede, the cyclic okay, or 1%, I think Doro okay, for try around 6, but but the drug of choice, according to the WHO now, is azithromycin. It used to be that better than doxycycline, but if you check the latest data, latest recommendations by the WHO, you can see the first choice. What is being considered the first choice now for cholera is azithromycin, but then the worst just a single dose, and the second, what are the second line drugs, Imalone, also single dose, but even doxycycline available. Kaya lang sa Pilipinas, doxycycline, we have no suspension, is available as a capsule. Mixed it with but azithromycin now being considered the first preferred makes it more, it's easier not to administer kasi meron suspensions available. So, antimicrobial therapy is indicated only for cases with moderate to severe dehydration, or cases with moderate to severe dehydration. And it's been noted that the giving of antibiotics is indeed beneficial for patients because it will shorten the duration of illness, reduce the period of exclusion, decrease the volume of diarrhea, and even will decrease fluid requirement. So beneficial siya, particularly for moderate disease. Okay, is it preventable? Of course, we improve personal hygiene, improve sanitation, access to clean, safe water, like I said, proper intake of food. There's a vaccine, no, but it's not routinely given. Not part of the routine vaccination in children, but indicated more so during outbreaks and natural disasters as fulfilled by the health authorities. It's given orally, okay, at least the child should have 1 year old and two doses are common in the take note of indicated during outbreaks and natural disasters, but not part of the vaccination. Okay. Now let's go to E. coli associated diarrheas. So how does E. coli produce diarrhea? It's through adherence to a glycoprotein or glycolipid receptor followed by production of noxious substances that induce or disturb the function of intestinal cells. It's very important because E. coli is considered responsible for 30 to 40% of diarrheas all over the world, and apparently large, is what required because this is except for sugar toxin. Again, infections most likely to occur when food handling, and sewage disposal practices are suboptimal. So there's several, there are 5, no? So first is enterotoxigenic, E. coli abbreviated as ETEC. Okay? And this one is supposed to produce secretory enterotoxins, and it is said to be responsible for 10 to 30% of dehydrating infantile diarrhea. What is important to take note of is siya rin yung most common cause of travelers diarrhea. Diba? So, travel, have a recent travel, you're not really conscious of what you're drinking, and then, as I said, 2 days later, ka na, because you get that, then you think about ETEC as a possible cause, and it is characterized as explosive, watery, non-mucoid, non-bladder, so watery diarrhea. Together with abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, with little or no fever. Okay? But it is self-limited. Kung saan gumagaling siya, and it's supposed to resolve in 3 to 5 days. So it's very important how you feel dehydration. Then there's enteroinvasive E. coli or ITC. Could present either as watery diarrhea similar to the one caused by enterotoxicity E. coli, or ito yung the one that's capable of causing a dysentery like syndrome, similar to Shigella. Ayan. Starting with bloody mucoid stools, and fecal leukocytes, together with fever, systemic toxicity, abdominal cramp, tenesmus, we mentioned that last time. And so it is the one that is supposed to resemble the bacillary dysentery caused by Shigella, because Shigella and enteroinvasive E. coli supposedly share the same virulence gene. So, clinically, we would be treated as if it were the cirrhosis. We need to find out if it happens to work as E. coli, maybe the one that is isolated in school. So the third one is enteropathogenic E. coli or EPEC effect. The major cause of not only acute diarrhea but also what's called persistent diarrhea. Persistent diarrhea, those having diarrhea of more than 14 days. So binibilang din yan yung duration. So it's more than 14 days. It's no longer acute but what's called persistent diarrhea. So effect can cause both acute and persistent diarrhea, particularly as years pain, developing countries, so this presents as confused, non-done diarrhea with mucus, vomiting, and bloating fever. And breastfeeding is also used. The fourth one is what's called Shigatoxin, producing E. coli or SK, which formerly was called EHEC, hemorrhagic E. coli. So cases may be asymptomatic, and the disease can range from a mild diarrhea to one of severe hemorrhagic colitis. So it can also present with abdominal pain and initially watery diarrhea to watery diarrhea bloodstream that will be bloodstream to be bloody. But as compared to tuberculosis, wala, hindi sila linalagnat. So it's a very important cause of hemorrhagic colitis. Majority of cases, they are expected to recover. Kaya lang, 5 to 10% can have systemic complications, and there are two very famous complications. The first one is HUS, or hemolytic uremic syndrome. I mentioned this with what's the other important cause of HUS that I discussed last time. Ano yun? There are two important factors associated with HUS. Ito, STEC and Shigella dissemination. So after a bout of diarrhea, patient goes on to the signs of renal failure. Anong signs of renal failure? What I'm trying to wake you. What signs of renal failure? Yes. Ano? Okay. Decrease or visual o urea or anuria. That's true. Always be very particular about asking about the answer. Even without the lab test, even before you get the result of the lab, you'll be suspecting or azotemia means that you expect abnormal UNN or creatinine. Pero hemolytic anemia, nagkaka-hemolysis sila. If there's anemia, that would be presenting as clinically. Hindi ka tumitigil sa akin. Anemia, anong presentation? Mako, okay, talo. And then even thrombocytopenia. Okay, or in adults, there's what's called PTP, thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, similar to HUS. Kaya lang yun, may accompanying neurologic abnormalities. So, ang mental status, seizures, hemophilia, paresthesia, severity of HUS, PTP would be similar to HUS, and then, plus neurologic abnormalities. And then the fifth one is enteroagglutinin E. coli, AGEC, similar to enteropathogenic E. coli, also is capable of both acute and persistent diarrhea. Tapos, it's also known to be a very important cause of acute and persistent diarrhea among HIV-infected African children. Tapos siya pala yung pangalawang cause ng traveler's diarrhea. Yeah, it's a very important cause of acute traveler's diarrhea. Second thing, the schools are described as watery mucoid diarrhea with bloating fever, and little or no vomiting, pero apparently pwede rin siyang blood. If it's persistent, it will have to lead to retardation, it has to be even malnutrition. Oh, and there's a sixth one, DAPC, diffusely and regularly adherent E. coli. So the status has to function at first it was without, but later on kasi both developed and developing countries have associated it with diarrhea after the first year or two at 2 years old. And yun, itong PATC was it's also reported to be a cause of troubles during pregnant adults. So, typically produces acute water diarrhea. It's not diarrhea. It's not bloody and often, no? It gets prolonged. It's both acute and persistent diarrhea. Okay, so the clinical features actually are not distinctive, and yeah, and you know that most of the labs are not even able to do serofiltering. So yung mga big lab, do RIT and like they're not able to work the isolate further and see what exactly what is in most laboratories. Pag may pagpagawa ng school to subject E. coli, which can be a normal flora, especially if it's isolated from a patient who has no symptomatic, but if the patient is symptomatic, they are going to check. If they happen to have traveled, most likely enter toxicity. If it's bloody, very much blood skin or bloody very anything like that. With fever, very much that you get a think of entering. Pag nag-HUS, siguro, este. Pag naging persistent, either enteropathogen E. coli or enterogen E. coli or not so commonly DEC. Okay, so yan, they do tissue culture assays or yung mga identification of specific payload factors like phenotype or genotype. But like I said, not all the time, you know, that most of the time, we won't be able to determine the specific serotype. The treatment, like all the areas, mainstay would be fluid and electrolyte replacement, early refeeding, zinc, supplementation, and specific antimicrobial therapy for diarrhea when ready to problematic. But just the same, for severe troubles diarrhea, your choices will either be a single dose of azithromycin or for adolescents, you know, the patient should be a single dose, either a single dose of ciprofloxacin, but it's not resolved, so that can be given up to 3 days. Okay, what about cotrimoxazole? Yung pinag-ulit ko na to. There would be an appropriate choice for susceptible enteropathogen E. coli, enteropathogen E. coli, or even enteropathogen E. coli. So like I said, if it happens to be, and the cause happens to be enteropathogen E. coli, usually it gets to be treated as tuberculosis. Okay, so kasi dun nga, isn't it one important, seldom would you give an maybe the mainstay diarrhea would be what? Electrolyte and fluid replacement like an antibiotic. They really treated only in certain conditions, particularly the causes of no? So that, so pag nagtatanong kayo, kasi hindi nagtatanong, always take note of that, no? If it's blood street or that. But be careful if it were Shigettoxin E. coli, because supposedly should not be given for Shigettoxin E. coli because the study showed that this may increase the risk of HUS. Okay, so done with E. coli. Next is Campylobacter. 15 gram, 15 curve. It's non-scorporing with tapered ends, and it could either be from corn, no, most probably food, then from food, or family food. Mostly, most of the case would be food born rather than waterborne. So, ano naman, which food gets contaminated? What would be a source of Campylobacter? So, likely contaminated poultry, no, chicken or turkey, or raw milk. Less commonly in water, and even pets and farm animals. Most common is resource-limited settings and spread by person to person. It could also be spread person to person perinatally, from a pregnant mother to the baby. And then be transmitted in childcare centers. So, the US 500 and more than 9,000 are needed to Australia. So, not so, but this is your book, just take a look. This is supposed to show you the different species of Campylobacter associated with human disease. Pero, what are considered most commonly, what can commonly cause disease on the human would be that of Campylobacter jejuni, and Campylobacter coli. Si Campylobacter ficus, the one associated with systemic urinary and even bed-related overview of all the Campylobacter species, Campylobacter jejuni, and Campylobacter coli, but good account for other cases. So clinically, it would present as an acute gastritis after incubation period of like 1 to 7 days, but average of 3 days. So they go to a prodrome where there's fever, headache, myalgia, and within 1 to 3 days, the patient will have crampy abdominal pain and initially loose watery stools. It could just be watery or less commonly bloody mucoid. Mucoid containing mucus containing stools. And in severe, noted in about 15% of cases, it could present as bloody stool at the condition. And fever may be, for some patients, fever may be the only case, particularly young infants, young children. Fever may be the only manifestation initially, and they can all even have fever symptoms. So what about acute gastroenteritis? Around 60 to 90% of older children will have significant abdominal pain or crampy, very umbilical, even after the elder. So this is one this is where supposedly abdominal pain is very prominent. In such a way that it could even be mistaken for appendicitis initially. And the abdominal pain can persist even after elder. Abdominal pain can mimic appendicitis, colitis, or if bloody, if plastic and hypersubplastic, may be mistaken for infection. And the reports of relapses in 10% of patients, if it becomes persistent or recurrent, it can become persistent diarrhea. So what's persistent? Where the urine is more than 40 days, or pwedeng pabalik-balik. And these cases can be reported of competent patients, or those with hypothermia and infected patients already have gone on to full-blown AIDS. But those having persistent infection, you must be careful of those having persistent infection, because it could mimic chronic inflammatory bowel disease. So what we talk about this are yung Crohn's. What's the other one? Ulcerative UC. We're getting cases of IBD. I remember the first case I saw in the clinic, and the problem was that the blood was more than heavy recurrent blood diarrhea that would get treated with either the most common cause of acute blood diarrhea is what we call would be what? Acute blood diarrhea, most common that we discussed it last time. Lack. What's the most common cause of acute blood diarrhea? And you are allowed to treat empirically for what disease? Letter S. Sige. Hindi naman kalimutan. Di ba yata pumapasok? Are you still sa vacation mood? Kung nag-quiz tayo ngayon, sana naman pagtandaan yung mga sinasabi. Anyway, this child was talking about kind of with recurrent bladder and with repeated Shigel or even Askimea. Kaya ganun. Anyway, I decided to, what do you call this, to refer the case to our gastroenterologist, I think Dr. Mula. Yeah, and eventually it turned out to be a case of inflammatory bowel disease. So, how you wish that in a case like that, maybe it's just an infection, it's not like a colitis, not like IBS. Anyway, so persistent infection can mean persistent infection with Campylobacter can mean chronic inflammatory disease. So, it should be considered when evaluating, when you come to evaluate for IBD, you should consider the possibility that it may be Campylobacter. Okay. There can be bacteremia, but like either just 0.1 to 1% cases, particularly among malnourished children, or patients with chronic illnesses or immunodeficiency. And focal extraintestinal infections are rare, okay, with Campylobacter jejuni, but will be noted among neonates and immunocompromised patients as meningitis, pneumonia, or conjunctivitis, hepatitis. Now, among neonates, it happens that they happen to get infected with Campylobacter typhus. They are at risk for vascular endothelium, leading to endocarditis. There are predilection for vascular endothelium, leading to endocarditis, pericarditis, sarcoiditis, and even myocarditis aneurysm. So, but and the rest of the Campylobacter here, no, as you see, it can be related to certain disease, but they're not supposed to be common in children. Okay, perinatal. Pwede rin palang the neonate who can get infected from after birth to from the mother. And they get infected with or shed for mothers who are infected or happens to be shedding either Campylobacter typhus or Campylobacter jejuni. So this can result in abortion, stillbirths, premature delivery, or even infections.